Hey friends, happy soggy Wednesday. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, coming to you from here on the farm, and it is monsoon raining here. I don't know about where you are. Super glad to be here today, and this is Ask a Flower Farmer. And what that is for the next 30 minutes or so, I am going to do my best to answer your questions. And if you have a question, you just post it down in the bubble with the question mark on it. And that way I don't lose your question scrolling through everybody's name, right? So Suzanne and I are on the farm doing a super fun project. Y'all check out one of our backdrops. We're filming here this morning for a new project that you're going to learn more about on Friday, and then it launches on Monday. So I cannot wait, y'all. It's like the team would kill me if I told y'all what it was. But anyway, so it is monsoon rain. I mean, we have standing water everywhere, leaking roofs, leaking windows on every building I go into, it seems like. So it's just not such a happy Wednesday around here, but we're making the best of it, right? So let's see, let's catch up. So if you haven't already gotten on the wait list on my book, you know, the publisher has sold out of the whole entire first printing. The second and third printing are in action. We are expecting some books tomorrow, and so we'll put them back live on the website. We're still working through pre-orders and orders. We're still filling orders of those previously ordered. But anyway, get on the wait list if you want a book from us, and that will include that extra bonus resource. So super, it's really exciting for all that, but it also makes things very complicated, y'all. So I see we've got a couple of questions. So here on my farm, we are getting the kind of the finishing plantings of our very early spring cool flowers. Our fall planted stuff looks so amazing. Bobo and I were out there trying to squeeze in more plantings of other stuff because I kind of count on losing one or two crops over the winter for, you know, just from stuff, right? Things happen. Well, and then I plan on, you know, I have something to go in that spot, right? And oh my gosh, nothing died, y'all, except for the Godicia that the deer ate to the ground. And I also successfully killed the Didiscus. So that's on another whole conversation. But everything's going super great here on the Cool Flower Garden. And remember to join me for the show on Friday. We have Swift blockers back in stock. I'll be demonstrating those. And so if you don't already have our phone app, just go to your phone's app store, search Gardener's Workshop, download the app. It's totally free, and that is the best experience. And that way you can build wish list. You can you can enter to be in the drawing. I give away something great every week. So let's take a look at some of these questions. So, I'm sorry. Somebody asked, how do you get on the wait list? If you comment book here in this conversation, just put book in the comment. That'll DM you the link to the book page, and you can get on the wait list right there. And you know, we'd be happy for you to be on that. We're pretty sure that I bought the last 2,000 copies of the book from the publisher last week when I learned that they were the last 2,000. And we know we already have some of those committed, but we know that the wait list that we have for the book is going to probably just consume that. So if you want a book from us, so I sign it, of course. And yes, y'all, this has been a funny question. I sign every book. People ask how many people do I have signing books. Y'all, we've sold thousands and thousands of books, and I have signed each and every one of them. And so I just want you to know that. Anyway, if you want it from us, it'll be signed, wrapped, and it comes with the extra resource, the flowers that didn't make the handbook. Then you need to get on our wait list. And we'll have more books there. I mean, it'll be April is when the second printing should come due, and then the third printing will be here in June. So the book will be available ultimately. Anyway, so that's the story. But you can just comment book here, and that'll DM you directly the link to the book. So let's see some of these questions. How much fertilizer should you use on seedlings? Maggie asks. Well, Maggie, it depends on the fertilizer you're using, and I would say follow the directions on the bottle. We use Neptune's Harvest Seaweed Fish, and I follow the directions for the house plant watering, which I believe is 1 tablespoon per gallon. Sorry, y'all, I got notified and it distracted me. All right. Is Status a good candidate to succession plant beyond typical fall and very early spring sowing? What a great question. Heaven sent. So I consider those flowers that have incredible stem length to be good candidates for potential succession planting beyond their normal planting time, which you mentioned, fall and very early spring. Our Status is probably 30 inches tall at least from very early spring planting. And so you could surely try it. Ours I actually did an experiment a couple, 3 years ago. We planted just a handful of plants. And it seems to me, and then it depends on what kind of season you have. If it's going to be irrigated and mulched and cared for, they probably do all right. But if they're facing heat and humidity, because they're a cool season hardy annual, right? They're probably not going to perform very well. So I would decide on, and our plantings from fall and very early spring produce for so long. Literally, I can remember mowing them down last year with flowers on them. So I don't know how necessary it would be for us in our circumstance, but you never know until you try it. I seeded cress on Saturday and put them on top of my fridge to germinate. Totally forgot about them until today. I found them and they're already 4 inches tall. Would you pinch them out and start over, or would you do with them? I mean, I would, I wouldn't worry about them being tall, from lack of light. They'll probably be fine. I would just sow more cress. Cress is the one that you wait until it gets the seed heads. You don't cut it when it's got flowers. They don't last very long at all. I'm just thinking they get fairly tall. It would be, if you're not happy, if they're falling all tangly and a mess, I'd trash them and restart, especially since you got such quick results. And now to look quicker to get them down to light. And you know what else will do that is amaranth. We have amaranth germinate in 12 hours. And so you have to move. Literally, we start them in the morning, and it's the only thing I've ever come out to the building at night in the evening before I go to bed to see if they've germinated, to move them to the light, because they get really tangly really fast. So that's what I would try. Let's see. Some of my very early spring stock transplants have yellow leaves. Is this from transplant shock, or is there something I can do? Some of my very spring stock transplants. So I'm guessing you're saying that you planted them outdoors. It could be stress. It could be, overwatering or underwatering. So you'll kind of have to evaluate the situation and see what you think. If they're in a tray, if they're not planted yet, then they need to get planted. That is a really good sign that they're miserable and they want to move on if they're still growing in a tray. So give that a try. If they're out in the garden and you didn't add fertilizer to the soil and you don't know the status of your soil, then probably a little bit of fertilizer application might be in order. But I would just read the situation. Is it soil that has fertilizer present in it, or, kind of too much water or not enough, and see what happens with that. What is the best time of day to transplant seedlings? And when the roots and the soil blocks are super long and tangly, does it hurt to cut them down? That's a great question too, Maggie. I do cut them. If the roots are more annoying to try to plant, I just take a pair of scissors and just prune them, there's nothing wrong with that. But it just takes time. We try not to have to do that. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it depends on what season you're talking about. If I'm planting in very early spring when it's cold outside, it's, still low 30s or whatever. I do like to plant in the early day so that I can plant and get them hooped and row covered, and the heat, sunshine can, kind of work on that little tunnel a little bit. On the other hand, when it's 95 degrees outside and I'm planting warm season tender annuals, I find the opposite, but that doesn't happen for us because we don't work in the evening. We just don't work then. That would be the best time to plant warm season, is in the evening, so that they could recover overnight, not fighting the sun, right, and the heat. But we plant whenever we can plant, and then make sure that they're, watered in well. We take steps to give them whatever protection they may actually need. Funny enough, this program that Suzanne and I are working on today that we're shooting is about how to nurture seedlings to thrive. It's not really about seed starting. And it is a lot of what I have figured out after years of teaching and preaching about seed starting and flower farming, right? That never gets talked about. It's the support system. And that's something that we have really focused on greatly for the last 2 decades on our farm. And anyway, so super excited for y'all to hear about our new project. Cannot wait, y'all. Celosia leaves turning brown and plant shriveling. Have you ever had that? So I don't know where you are, Sunny Hill Flower Farm. Maybe you're in Australia or you're in the deep south. It's still way too warm. It's way too cold. We don't even starting celosia for several more, maybe 3 more weeks. So if they're in a tray of some kind, plug trays, soil block tray, it could be just because they're maybe past their transplant time. But there's so many things that can cause that kind of stuff. It just really depends. And if you're seeing it in more than one tray, it could be something environmental. And again, seedlings that are overgrown get ugly like this, turning brown, getting spots, turning yellow, shriveling, getting root-borne disease because they're being overwatered. There's just lots of different things that can cause that. I'm sorry I can't give you more details. Why do you sometimes use a germination chamber instead of just using a heat mat? Which plants do you start in the germination chamber? A germination chamber is you start using that because of volume. When we were, producing 10 to 15,000 stems of flowers a week and starting, over 100,000 seedlings a year in our little small space here, that's when a germination chamber became necessary. There wasn't enough heat mat available, and I had probably 4 6-foot heat mats going at that time. And we still use seedling heat mats because now I have both. I have lots of options, right? But a germination chamber is something that you move to once you need volume. I can put, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. I think I can put 21 trays of 240 blocks each in the germination chamber all at once, where I could only fit 10 trays on a seedling heat mat. So that's the reason for that. And that's something that we teach about in flower farming school, is germination chamber. Kim, hello. I planted several varieties of feverfew in fall and again in January. How much succession do you plant before it gets too hot? She's in just about the same place as me. Thank you so much. Love, love, love your book. Oh, Kim, I'm so glad you got one. So feverfew, which we have found to be an incredibly useful commercial crop for florists and bouquet filler. It's as useful to us as it is to florists. The key is to figure out how to succession it so it doesn't all, because it all blooms at the same time. All the varieties basically bloom at the same time. So we do like you, I fall and very early spring plant. And then if I was in a big bouquet production program, which we did for years, we would plant it again probably 4 to 6 weeks after the very early spring planting. And it just depends on how much planting and harvesting do you really need, and how much volume. And so for us, when we were making hundreds of bouquets on top of going to farmers markets and all these other things, we always had stuff to just vacuum up all the stems that we cut, right? So we have to really think about before you can do it. So 4 to 6 weeks, I would say. Feverfew, I believe, is day length sensitive, so you don't want to plant it too late in the summer and the days to start getting short on you. So I'd say 4 to 6 weeks after your very early spring. And because for us, feverfew doesn't really regrow. And so that's what we've done. But it's a great filler for sure. Aaron, thank you so much. I just started. Oh, here we go. She's talking about the celosia. Thank you so much. I just started celosia seeds 10 days ago. They have germinated and are now under grow lights. When should I fertilize and what do I use? Okay, so we use, as I mentioned earlier, the Neptune's Harvest seaweed fish, and I use the houseplant dosing directions that are on the bottle. And you can find that. I'm sorry, y'all. My dog is eating dried flower debris. So we do that once a week. That's what I do on Mondays is fertilizer day. I just put that. I dose my watering can that I'm watering seedlings with. And just remember, celosias like it warm. So, we still have some cool seasons experiments going on in our grow room. So our grow room's kind of coolish for them. And as soon as that's done, we'll just heat that room up because to get good vegetative growth, you have to really have warmth. And so that's what you want to have for them, warmth, and don't overwater them. Be sure that your environment is such warm that the blocks dry out in a 24-hour period. But I find celosias to be easy keepers. Sounds like you already got them to germinate. That's the struggle most people have. This might be a silly question, but what do you use to measure the ground temperature? So first off, there are no silly questions, y'all. If you have that question, I can promise you somebody else does. And I do not measure ground temperature at all. And I talk about this in the book. I go 100% based on air temperature. And that's just easier. It's just you can look at your weather app. You can, you don't have to go out and do stuff to figure that out. And so I use air temperature, and I go in depth talking about what those temperatures should be for the different families, cool season versus warm season in the book. And just makes it super simple. If y'all haven't figured that out about me yet, we don't use a lot of gadgets. We don't use a lot of different tools. We streamlined our business. More tools, more stuff take more time, not to mention more money and more space. And that's kind of what my niche is. If you go to our website and look, we don't offer a lot of different tools. We only sell the stuff that I use, literally. And that's just not many. We've just found that that's what works best for us. And using air temperature is a big, easy, really easy stepping stone for that. Maggie, again, sorry to bug. You're not bugging. Thank you so much for your help. Once we transplant seedlings, should we keep them row covered on a nice day, zone 7B, and just cover at night, or does it help to keep them covered all the time? So first off, it depends on, are you talking cool or warm? We only cover seedlings when they're newly planted, primarily to protect them from either wind or varmints. Excuse me. What are you eating now? Tucker is eating. Isn't that, y'all? Y'all can see the whole thing, but in our shooting, you won't see the top and the bottom. Isn't that awesome? Look at all that beautiful eucalyptus. So it just depends. So we use row cover to either hoop and cover newly planted seedlings that, whether it's fall planting or very early spring, we're using that for a little bit of cold protection. But once we start planting warm season tender annuals, we only cover now to protect from deer if that's needed, or wind. So it really depends on your circumstances. Sorry, I cannot answer that better for you because I'm not quite sure exactly what you're thinking of. Are all very early spring seeds started at 12 weeks? I see only suggestions for fall starting on seed pack. I'm not sure I know what a VEP is. Very early. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, sorry. The Living Stones, you'll have to retype that. I'm not sure that I understand. You have to tell me what VEP is. I'm not sure what that is. Let's see. What flowers, besides maybe sunflowers, do you grow without irrigation? All of our other beds typically all of them get irrigation installed except for those beds we make specifically for sunflowers. And the only reason we don't irrigate sunflowers is, first off, where I live, we get up to like 52 inches of rain a year. So like right now, it all seems to come at the same time. But it rains really often. And sunflowers are planted at about 20 to 21 days old. They're only 60 days from seed to bloom, so they're almost through a third of their life. We water them in by hand when they're planted, and they're just so hardy. So I don't do that with any other flower because we don't have any other flower that's only in the garden for 40 days, basically. So that's the big point of that, right? The Living Stone very early spring, the very early spring seeds started at 12 weeks. So nothing has started. I don't know what 12 weeks is. So when you start a seed is based on when you're going to plant it, right? And then the number of weeks that you need to grow that transplant. Typically, we plant 6 to 8 weeks before the first frost, or in very early spring is 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost. To have transplants ready to go at that 6 to 8 week, which for us is February 14th till March 1st. Wiggle room, we're still planting some, right? We start those, it depends on what flower we're talking about, but typically 4 to 8 weeks before we're ready to transplant those babies out, right? Blake's Bloom. Should I keep my sprouted sunflowers on a heat mat if my basement is chilly? That's a good question. So if you're starting early bird sunflowers, which we have, again, sunflowers are truly a warm season tender annual, but we know that they are more cold tolerant and we can get them in the garden earlier than we ever thought with protection. But if you want them to grow, if you want them to have top growth, to grow up into a little transplant, they have to have heat. They have to have some warmth, right? So they need grow lights in your basement and they need some warmth, however you're going to give that to them. If you can leave them on, a seedling heat mat. The problem with the seedling heat mat and a grow light at the same time, even for sunflowers, is heat mats can really warm the soil up, right? And then the light could be warm. You'll actually have the potential to toast them. So you need warm air temperature if you want vegetative growth on any plant. So that's the story. So you might want to consider just moving them somewhere where the air temperature is warmer. Hay Hill House. What's the shortest height you have planted out snapdragons? Have seen a lot of others have some compact snapdragons this year. Our standard for transplanting is 3 to 5 inches, and it really depends on the sturdiness of it, because what happens when you start planting not so happy transplants, tiny maybe, and they just aren't thriving, they're never going to make it outside, right? So I don't mind planting a 3-inch plant outdoors if it's vigorous and growing. But to do a rescue mission on struggling transplants that just aren't growing, most often when I hear of people having particularly struggling snapdragons or short snapdragons is they're overwatering. That's a really big problem with snaps. So 3 to 5 inches is what our goal is. Let's see. Kathleen, please explain where you grow the dill used in your bouquets. Do you reseed this area or just leave it to self-sowing? So, it depends on, are you a home gardener? Are you a small market gardener that's, doing a small subscription where you don't have obligations to florists? When you're a high production farm like we've been for the last 2 decades, you don't rely on anything for self-sowing. We have stuff pop up in our garden. I mean, rudbeckia pops up everywhere. I mean, all different kinds of stuff. Poppies, all different kinds of things. But we never count on them. We fall plant dill every single year. And because sometimes we'll lose it over the winter, I'm just reminding myself right now, sister, we don't have any dill growing out in the garden. We're going to have to plant some. Dill we'll plant in very early spring too is the plan if we lose it over winter, which we did lose it this year, but not because of winter cold. The squirrels got in there and just destroyed that area of the garden. But we plant it every single year to count on it. And then if it pops up somewhere in a bed, of course we might leave it if it's not interfering, because you never have enough dill. We totally love that in bouquets. Sunny Sunflowers Sky Farm. Did your Miss Burns basil wilt at your farmer's market? Having trouble with it in the heat at our markets? So you can. So we did primarily only use Miss Burns lemon basil most of the time because it was definitely a customer favorite. I show videos, I think, in Flower Farming School of showing where to strip basil because most people leave way too much foliage. And when it's stripped properly and hydrated and then kept out of the sun at all costs, and our customers knew at the farmer's market, we didn't put it in our mixed bouquets, we would take a bucket with us. And then as we were wrapping bouquets, put a stick in for them. That way we could protect it, you know what I mean? And keep it out of the sun. But yeah, it can be predisposed to that. But I tell you, our customers loved lemon basil so much, they'd say, I don't care if it's wilted, put it in and I'll do CPR at home. So it's that important. But we found taking the bucket of just Miss Burns, keeping it shaded under your table or wherever you need to keep it out of the sun, and well hydrated and properly hydrated and stripped, did pretty good. And I mean, we were at a hot suffering farmer's market. Let me tell you, we were on the York River and you would think we'd have a breeze. There was never a breeze at that market. So I hope that helps. Duckfoot Farms, do you grow any partial sun shade cut flowers? We have limited full sun growing space. So we do grow a large shade garden that's primarily, it's like 99% hellebores that are filler. We use it in our bouquet program, sell tons of them to florists. Takes years. They're a perennial, right? And they grow at the foot of big, large, thirsty trees. And they're a great cash crop. But it takes, 5 years before if you invest in a lot of small plants from a plug liner supplier, get them planted and they're happy, in 5 years you'll have a ton. But it's just getting there. Most people, aren't that long visioned in their projects, but that's pretty much all we grow in. I'm just thinking, other than hydrangeas, and those are in shade also. But those were both big support crops to our bouquet programs, and we sold them to florists. I mean, we could sell them at every market. When I say market, I mean we sold to florists and supermarkets and CSAs and private members only market and so forth. So that would be all that I could think of. The problem with part sun and shade cut flower growing is you don't get, most of them are perennials, and they don't produce over and over and over again. So you have to have a lot of different stuff. And it's just not conducive to cut flower production. But it's a great support system to your other stuff that's out in full sun. So hope that helps. All right, friends, it is 1 minute to 1. And I'm going to wrap it up here because we still have a lot of videos to shoot. Thanks for joining me. Remember to join me Friday on the live shopping show that happens at 12 noon Eastern Time inside our app. The special offer this week, y'all, is that the Swift blockers aren't normally offered in the app, because shipping is capped at $9.95. But that's the special offer this week, is there's no additional shipping because it costs more than that to ship it to y'all. We're going to have our kits and the individual blockers. We're going to have a great show. And so I hope that you will join me there. And thank you all so much for your support on the book. And if you want to get on the wait list, you can just type in book here in the comments, and that'll DM you the link to the page where you can get on the book wait list. And I can't wait. Y'all, we've had such raving reviews, and I'm being interviewed tomorrow by Southern Living magazine, a writer for them for the .com, which is better than the magazine. It just super exciting, y'all. It's just really, really very exciting. So till we meet again, I hope to see you Friday, and try to stay dry. If you're in southeastern Virginia getting the monsoon, you know, put your boots on. All right, friends, until we meet again. And if you're not on our email list, you better get on it, because a big old announcement is coming out on Friday. It's going to take y'all by surprise, I think. And then it launches on Monday, and you do not want to miss it, because this is the funnest thing I have done in years. And I can't wait. All right, friends. Ciao.